Hi there. Today I'm really interested to be trying a wine from Long Island. So this is Channing Daughters 2014 Scuttlehole Chardonnay, and it has, I believe, the Long Island AVA. The winery was established in 1982 by Walter Channing, who is also quite an accomplished sculptor, and it was named after his offspring, his daughters. The winery now has somewhere in the region, I believe, about 30 hectares of vines. They have 6 vineyards. Scuttlehole is one of those, and it's evidently runs downhill towards the winery, and that's where they have their Chardonnay planted. The vineyard was planted first in 1991, and I believe it's in the South Fork region of Long Island. The original planting was of 2 clones from Dijon, 95 and 96, and they planted those, I believe, 8 feet apart down the rows, which is quite wide spacing. They didn't find they were quite happy with the sort of level of complexity that the fruit was getting. So at a later date they came along and they interplanted in the to bring the spacing down to 4-foot intervals with other clones, so increasing the variety of genetic material that they had for that. This particular wine is unoaked, or I believe they do also make an oaked Chardonnay. It's 100% Chardonnay. The wines are hand-picked, they're fermented, they're whole bunch pressed, which gives you really clean juice. They're then fermented with temperature control in stainless steel tanks, and they refer to their approach as being minimal intervention. So I'm assuming that although this probably ages in tank with the dead yeast for a period of time, that's not going to be stirred back up again. That's just sort of sitting with it there. And then they talk about the wine being bottled by gravity, a gravity-fed system. So really trying not to do too much to interfere with the purity of the fruit there. Also, they prevent malolactic conversion from taking place. So you've got the crisp greenish malic acid retained there rather than it being softened by that. I mean, I was slightly concerned, given that this is a 2014 and is therefore somewhere in the region of coming up for 9 years old, that maybe this might be past its best. But actually opening it, I've been quite impressed by it. I mean, looking at it, I think if I'd been too concerned, I would have expected the colour to be really quite dark. In fact, this is a pale to medium yellow colour, maybe heading slightly towards a straw hint, but certainly nothing that shows me any great concern there. Swirling it and looking at it, it's not particularly showing any tears on the glass. I mean, it's 12.5% alcohol, so and you know, without the weight being added by oak or extensive lead stirring, I'm not expecting it to be particularly viscous, so that makes sense. Let's have a look at the aromas. The aromas are complex, and this is where you start to see the wine's age, because there are sort of notes of the leesiness, the yeasty notes there, from aging with the yeast. At the same time, it's also overlaid with sort of notes of, gosh, I suppose they're almost like fermentation notes, sort of gunflint slightly, and I suppose a toastiness, but then not toastiness coming from oak, we know that. This is toastiness from the interaction of the yeast with the fruit to an extent. But also, because of the wine's age, you're getting a sort of an aldehydic, slightly sort of salty tang, almost like a touch of a sort of Manzanilla sherry or something like that. And you're not seeing a sort of a fresh citric note that you might expect with a younger wine of this sort, an unoaked Chardonnay or Chablis or something like that. But let's have a taste and see what we make of it. On the palate, the wine's completely dry and the acidity is mouth-watering. There's a sort of real steely freshness, and it's really making your mouth very, very clean. and that's overlaying a sort of a creamy butterscotchy texture and flavour that's coming from the wine aging with its yeast lees. Now, one of the points about this being a mature wine is that the flavours are all beautifully harmonised together. So I'm talking about butterscotchiness, but there's also that mineral note that I was talking about with the acidity, but also a saline note coming from the fact the wine has aged, and that salinity and the slight fermentation gunflinty note and also toastiness are all beautifully combined on this mid palate. Now, I think maybe it's fair to say the wine is probably slightly past its best, but it's still drinking really nicely. I think maybe if it was at an ideal condition a couple of years ago, it might have still had lovely fresh citric fruit coming through. But the fact that it's got good acidity, the fact the alcohol's not particularly high, as I say, 12.5%, this wine has managed to keep its equilibrium really quite well, and the flavours last very well. There's as I say, there's a yeasty note that's continuing, and then that sort of tails off to this sort of slightly saline and mineral crisp finish. Yeah, really nicely together. Would be a lovely pairing for white meat, so that sort of lighter style food, and possibly with a cream sauce, because the cut that you're getting from that acidity would work really nicely with that, or perhaps with sort of goat's cheeses and salads and things like that. So that was Channing Daughters Scuttlehole Chardonnay, the 2014. A really nice surprise to see how the wine had aged. So I hope you found that interesting. If you've enjoyed the video, do please feel free to like and to share, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye now.